Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to our second segment of Power on the Hour. We are delighted that this campaign is going so well at the moment. We're on over 190,000 already, and that is absolutely brilliant. So we thank everyone who has already donated. There's still a long way to go. I'm watching the total here right next to me as it goes up. And it's an amazing thing. The Jewish people are incredible. So thank you so much for all of the donations already. And let's keep them going because that will keep seed going. It's an honor and a privilege for me to introduce our next guest speaker. Rabbi Paysach Krohn is familiar, I think, to almost everyone in the Jewish world. I grew up actually listening to Rabbi Paysach Krohn's tapes and his stories. My children are growing up listening to the very same voice. I have to say that it's a pleasure to actually speak to him, to speak with him, because it's a voice which is so familiar to so many of us. Rabbi Paysach Krohn is now going to join us all the way from New York. And there he is. Rabbi Krohn, thank you so much for joining us.
It is such an honor and a pleasure to see you once again and to speak with you. I can't thank you for inviting me. I still remember that electrifying Shalashudas that we had for your Kol El Chevra a couple months ago when I was in Stanmore and walked to your shul. It was fabulous.
Thank you so much. It was lovely, and please God, we'll all be able to get back to shul in the very future to be able to be together again in person. I just wanted to ask you before you begin what the situation is like in New York. I know that that's been sort of the epicenter of the coronavirus. How are you coping with the lockdown over there?
Well, it is kind of frightening. There's no question about it, especially when you read the statistics of how many have been sick and how many unfortunately passed away. But definitely, as the governor keeps reminding everyone, it looks like the curve is going down. There are less people coming to hospitals these days, still many. And as he says, each one is a hole in the heart because every person is beloved by a family member. But there are less deaths and less illness than there was a few weeks ago. But still, we've lost many, many great people, and it's very painful. And I believe that most people are being very, very careful.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you. With all of this going on, it's really an extra special thank you that you've joined us. And you're not only a master storyteller, but you're also the author of 10 books. And it's a real privilege to have you join us to share a message of inspiration with all of our viewers here today. So I'm going to hand over to you now without further ado, Rabbi Paysach Krohn from New York. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Rab Dov. It's such an honor to be part of Seed. Of course, Seed is very, very big in America as well. And the purpose of Seed is to continue the legacy of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism, from one generation to the next. And that is so beautiful, and to bring so many people into the fold. And when you first called me and you told me the topic, or the name of the program, Power of the Hour, I thought there can be no better title, especially during this time, because we know that we are now between Pesach and Shavuos, and we count 49 days. It's the days of Sphira. And the idea is that it's not only important to count the days, but to make every day count. And the way you make every day count is you make sure that every hour counts. And that's why the power of the hour is imperative. And it's a great title. And I hope that everyone will take so seriously and will be able to take within themselves some of the messages that I would like to give about making the most of every day, and making really that there is power in every hour. Now, this is a challenge. There's no question, because The Chavetz Chaim, the great sage who died in the 1930s, but left us many, many great books. The Mishnah Brura, which is the laws of daily life, and of course the laws of speech of Shmir Saloshan, which many of us certainly know about. But he once said something very important. And he said that every single day without fail, every day without fail, a Jew must do two things. One, he has to perform a kindness for another Jew. And the second, he has to learn something of Torah. Now, when you're out in the world and you're not quarantined, so certainly you have the opportunity to meet many people, come up with many, many situations. And so it's much easier to do a kindness for other people. But what are you going to do when you're stuck at home and you're quarantined? How are you going to do a chesed? Well, I want to tell you a story that happened this morning. This is the first audience that I am telling this story, although I did tell it to two of my relatives, and I cried both times that I told it. I hope I'll be able to control myself at this point. Many of you know that I am a moel. A moel is somebody who does ritual circumcisions, who does brisson on little boys. Now, of course, today, when somebody has to do a bris during this virus, there are very, very few people, if any, at a bris. No brisses are performed in the synagogue. The synagogues are closed. So it's performed in a private home, in the baby's home. And what happens is no guests come at this point. In the beginning, there was some guests, but now nobody comes. So at today's bris, there was just the father, the mother, the baby, and the grandfather was sitting out on the porch. But I want to tell you a call that I got this week. This week, a couple days before, actually before Shabbos, a fellow called me, very broken. And he said, Rabbi Krohn, my wife and I, we're married for 4 years. We have no children. And we heard from great rabbis that somebody that doesn't have children, if they pay for a bris, then God rewards them, because after all, they're paying for a bris of a child that they didn't have. So God will reward them with a child that they will be able to have a bris in their own family. He said, Rabbi, do you know anybody that I could pay for them if you're doing the bris for their son? I said, wow, that's very, very noble of you. Let me take a look at my schedule. You know, you can't just ask this to anyone. A person could be insulted, and I would have to figure it out. Well, the father and the mother that I did the bris for this morning, they were very lovely people. This was their fourth child. They have two other boys that I did the bris for. And I realized that with the coronavirus, probably the family is strapped for funds, and maybe they would be interested in having somebody pay for their son's bris. So I called him last night and I said, you know, there's a fellow who never has no children and he would like to pay for a bris. Would it be okay? I will come to do the bris for you tomorrow morning, which was today, and that fellow will pay for the bris. So the first reaction to the father, he's a very, very sincere fellow. He says, Rabbi, but doesn't it say in Jewish law that it's the father's obligation to make sure that his son has a bris? So it's my mitzvah. I don't want to give up the entire mitzvah. So, you know, how could I let somebody else pay for it? I said to him, well, why don't we do this? You pay a little bit and he'll pay most of it. You pay, let's say, a quarter of the bill, so to speak, for the bris, and he'll pay 3/4. He said, okay, let me discuss it with my rabbi. He calls me back 10 minutes. Lady says, yeah, my rabbi said it's okay. If I pay even a little bit for the bris, that'll be fine. I called back the other couple and I said, you know something? I'm doing a bris this morning and you'll be able to pay for the bris, and Bezrat Hashem, with God's help, in a year, you'll see, you'll be rewarded. And I'll be able to do a bris in your family. Well, he was so thrilled. I come to the bris this morning. As I told you, nobody was there except the father and the mother. The grandfather was out on the porch. The other children were on the other side of the house. And the father was the sandak. He was the one who held the baby. And we did the bris. We gave the name. And then after the bris, listen to what the father said. I could not get over it. I get so choked up. The father said, you told me that I only have to pay a quarter of the bill of the bris, and he's going to pay the 3/4. He said, but let me tell you what I'm doing. The other 3/4 of the amount of money that I was going to give you, I'm giving that to charity in the merit that that fellow should have a child. I started crying. I couldn't believe it. As you said before, Mika Amcha Yisrael. Here is a fellow who could have saved hundreds of dollars, right? Because that other fellow was paying. What's he doing? He's not looking to save the money. He's so touched by that other fellow who wants to have a child that he's going to give the rest of the money that he doesn't have to give. And he's giving it all to charity. Maybe I should have had him give it to seed, but whatever, wherever he's giving it to, he's giving it so that that other person should be able to have a child. Oh, that's greatness. That's our people. And I'll tell you something. I had a brother who passed away almost 2 years already. His name was Rab Kalman. He was a very, very big tzaddik. He lived in Lakewood. And you know something? Every night he would ask his children, every child, did you do something today to make another person smile? What a great question to ask our children before they go to sleep. Think about it, Kinderlach. Did you do anything to make another person smile today? What a great question. That's what the Chavetz Chaim is talking about. And so, my friends in England, let me tell you, you know what chesed you could do? Go through your contact list. Is there an elderly aunt? Is there an elderly friend, an elderly person in the shul, a man or a woman, who's sitting alone, quarantined? You may be with your children. You may be with your wife, but there's some people that are alone. Call them. Don't text. Don't email. Don't WhatsApp. Call them. Ask them how they're doing. It's not a long conversation, but it shows you care. What a mitzvah. And I'll tell you another thing that I think that we could tell our children. Make sure that every Friday you call the grandparents to say good Shabbos. Now, we do that in my family, and I'll tell you, when I get these calls, and my wife and I get these calls every Friday, it is so precious just to hear their voice, because everybody's busy. And that's a way of doing a chesed. Call someone, call an elderly, a former teacher, or a principal that you haven't thought about in years. Everybody's home. You can reach anybody today. And if you can't reach them, text them. They'll get back to you. I called an 80-year-old Rosh Yeshiva. He's semi-retired. He lives across the United States. I called him Saturday night. He was so touched. He's just a friend of mine. I didn't study in that yeshiva. He could not believe that I called him. Make that contact. And here's the second thing. Try to learn Torah every day. It doesn't have to be Gemara. It could be Chumash. And I'll tell you what I believe that every one of us should learn, and this is what I'm doing with my grandson. Learn the book of Ruth. Ruth, as she's called in English, was in a sense the mother of Mashiach, because from her eventually came David HaMelech, and of course from David HaMelech comes Mashiach. When the holiday of Shavuos is coming up after the 49 days that we count, in Shul, hopefully we'll be in Shul, we're going to read the book of Ruth. It's a very dramatic story, very painful, and such devotion of a daughter-in-law to a mother-in-law who became destitute. It's one of the most precious, beautiful stories in all of Tanakh. Learn it. Learn it with your children. Maybe learn 3 or 4 verses a day, but be prepared for Shavuot. Take a book of stories. As Rabbi Birnbaum mentioned, I've written, thank God, many, many books on Jewish short stories. It's called the Maggid series. I have a recent book called The Glittering World of Chesed. Read a story to your children every night. and read it for yourself as well. It'll elevate you. It'll show you the greatness of our people. It'll show you the greatness of those people who study Torah. So whether you learn Chumash or whether you learn Gemara or whether you learn Halacha, or even if you just read a book of stories, of Jewish stories that are true and that you could learn from, that's a great, great thing to do, because then that's the power of the hour. Then every day counts. Every day can be something special. And finally, I want to tell you one more thing. I think that as separate as we are, but we have an opportunity now that one day we're going to look back at this and say, you know, maybe we should not have squandered that opportunity. And that is to become close to our family members, especially those that have children in the house. Play a board game with them at night, every night. Make a special time when you are together. You will revel in that connection. It'll be so precious. Maybe a mother should bake a cake with her daughter, even if she's not the greatest cook or the baker. Doesn't make a difference. Do it together. In America, many of us here in the backyards, we have basketball hoops. A father, if he's still able to, let him play basketball with his kids. Let him play with all his kids. I'll tell you the truth. I'm a big believer in sports. I believe nothing wrong in following sports. I don't say you should hang up the sports figures in your wall. That's not what I'm talking about. But playing sports, we used to play sports in the backyard, basketball with the neighbors. The neighbors were the Flanagans, Irish people. And you know something? Some of those kids, if I was on one of the teams, they heard my children call me Tati. Could you imagine a kid, Richard Flanagan, is calling me Tati? Well, I never thought an Irish kid would call me Tati, but he did, because we were on the same team. And you could play ball with your kids. And you know something? Not only that, go for a walk with the kids. Finally, I just want to read you one thing, and that will close. I realize that you're in England, and maybe some of you are not even familiar with the horrendous storm and thunderstorms that hit the southern part of the United States a couple of years ago in Louisiana. And it was a thunderstorm called Katrina. And it wiped out homes and businesses. Billions of dollars were lost. People who had beautiful homes ended up in shelters. And people who had their homes had to stay home. All the schools were closed as they are today. And many of the teachers would teach their children, their students. I don't know if they had Zoom, but whatever it was, over the phone. And they called them. And, a study was done. What was the result of all those children who could not go to school and who were taught over the phone or some other technology? I'd like to read something to you. Hurricane Katrina taught us and taught the teachers on the Gulf Coast that an interrupted year is not the end of the world. It's okay if you don't get to cover all the content. It's okay if your grades are inflated because you can't test as normal. It's okay if your students are not able to complete the coursework as assigned. We worried that this missing part of the year would have terrible effects, but it didn't. Our Katrina children became doctors and lawyers and teachers and hairdressers and nurses and business owners, engineers, you name it. They're doing it all over the world. Don't sweat what is probably ultimately insignificant, but embrace the opportunity to stay connected with your students in order to build relationships and to reinforce a sense of normalcy. That's what I think. Let's lower the expectations in our home. Let's know that the kids are basically good. Find a reason to compliment them. Find a reason to embrace them. Find a reason to go for a walk with them. Make the hour into an hour of power. And I'll tell you this. You know what I do with all my 5 children? Baruch Hashem, they're all married. But every week I would give each child 20 to 25 minutes undivided attention. Just me and you. You want to go for a walk? We'll go for a walk. You want to do exercise? We'll go exercise. You want to go bowling? We'll go bowling. You want to buy pizza? We'll buy pizza. And if you want to learn Ezra, we'll learn Ezra. Connection. And that's why today, one of the greatest things in my life, I'm telling you, I give it a blessing to all of you. You know what I have now Thursday night? I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't usually tell this, but I love Rabbi Birnbaum and I just want to share it with you. One of the greatest things in my life is every Thursday night, I have what's called a Zaidi conference call. You know what that means? 11 o'clock at night, no matter what, I am on the phone. All my children and grandchildren over bar mitzvah and bas mitzvah, they're all on the phone for 15 minutes and I talk and sometimes they'll comment or whatever. I wouldn't miss that for the world. How does that start? It doesn't start when you're a grandfather. It starts when you're a father. When you take that hour and you make it an hour of power. When you spend the time with the kids, now's the time. Let's face it, this thing is going to end sooner than later. And eventually when it does end, we might miss this time that we had with the kids. Of course, some of the things we'll be happy we can do without. But take advantage. Take advantage of the hour. Take advantage that every day should count with chesed and with Torah. And if we do that, we will come out of this so much stronger and so much greater than we ever were before. Hashem should bless every single one of you. Hashem should bless Rabbi Birnbaum, Rabbi Siegfried, and all the wonderful people of Seed that are bringing the message, Hashem's message of Torah and Judaism to all the people around the world. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Paysach Krohn. That was incredible. What an incredible, heartwarming story. It happened just specifically today. Seems like it was tailor-made to be told to us here tonight. That's incredible. As always, you've managed to take the topic, power on the hour, and you've really managed to make something of it, which we're going to take away with us. Thank you so much. And we look forward to, please God, being able to hear from you in person after all of this is over. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd just like to just continue. We'd like to end this segment with Rabbi Shia Grunfeld, our Manchester Seed Director. Needs no introduction. Rabbi Grunfeld, over to you.
Thank you, Rabbi Birnbaum, and thank you, Rabbi Krohn, for those amazing, amazing words. And now over to you, our dear friends. To those of you who have already donated, it's just quite incredible to see that we've reached over £200,000 in such a short period of time. That's absolutely fantastic. Carry on with the theme of Mi Ka'amcha Yisrael, who is like the Jewish people. That's something absolutely outstanding. Thank you all so much. And to those of you who have not yet donated, please, please do all you can to help us continue the work that we are doing. Hundreds of people are looking for inspiration and direction and inspiration. And Seed is needed now more than ever. And we need you now more than ever. Please click the link and do all you can. Donate generously so that we can continue to inspire and to do our work. Thank you all so much.